Thank you. That was a very warm welcome, and I'm amazed how many patriotic Americans we have coming out during the week to come listen to something that, to me, is very important. And let me just set the stage for you. A lot of the information you'll see here today are elements of presentations I gave to young men and women in the Army before they left for Iraq and Afghanistan. General Honore, my boss, wanted these young kids to know why they're fighting. Because as you mentioned before, you've got to go to your board meetings because the kids are not being prepared for the future they're going to face. And we get these great men and women in the military. They mean well, they're patriotic, but number one, they don't know U.S. history. Number two, they don't know what terrorism is. Three, they're confused about Al-Qaeda. And so we had to get their minds straight on this so that when they go into the combat zone, they know why they're there. So I'd like to thank all of you for being here today and listening to this very important topic. Now what I plan to do is first talk a little bit. Then we'll see if you're interested in what I have to say, but I do want to leave ample time for questions. Because getting your arms around this is not easy. You know, when you're talking about Islamic radicalism, you say, well, what's up, what's down, who's on first, who's on second? It does get very confusing. And then when you get into the mainstream media, and they're always apologetic, they'd rather criticize Christians and Jews, and then the Muslims, for some reason, well, they get a pass. So we'll be talking a little bit about this as well. The key component that I hope I leave you behind is that Vivian asked me to say, okay, how do we solve this? Ladies and gentlemen, this comes down to our children. We've got to have our children trained. And that's why I ran for a District 211 board seat. I didn't win, but I talked about patriotism, which got a lot of people upset. I talked about kids having a moral compass before they leave. That got the atheists totally upset. And then the Daily Herald just went out of their way to try to knock me off, which they successfully did. But I did have a forum, which is very important. So what we'll do first is we'll go through a couple of slides. We'll see how your interest level is. And then if you want more, we'll go a little bit deeper. I'll talk for about 30 minutes. Vivian's going to keep me on track. And then we'll open it up to questions and see how many questions we can get answered. A little bit about Act for America. I'm the chapter leader in Palatine. There are over 400 chapters in the United States. You can find them on actforamerica.org. It's a fantastic website. It has over 400,000 members in the United States. It was started by Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte is a Lebanese Christian, and she's a wonderful human being. She went through a lot of terrorism in Lebanon. And if you really want a primer to get you understanding Islamic radicalism and the threat of Islam, go to her book, which is called Because They Hate. It's a very easy book to read. It's like a biography, but it also has elements in there that'll get you started on the road to understanding what's going on. All right, we always start out with what's been in the news. And the one thing that I've determined is that we are slowly being desensitized. Who would have thought before 9/11 that we would have homegrown terrorists going around the United States? Who would have thought, for example, just this past week, Seattle terrorism, 2 U.S. citizens tried to bomb a recruiting site. The press didn't seem all that concerned, and it's almost like, well, you know. It's the same thing like in Chicago, where you have the flash mobs, and then they come out and say, you can't call them flash mobs, because that may offend someone. So this political correctness is going to be very difficult because it doesn't allow us to really speak up. Delta Airlines, everybody hear about Delta Airlines? They don't allow anyone to go into Saudi Arabia if you're Jewish, heaven forbid, but if you even have a passport and you went to Israel, they won't let you in. They also added the fact that, well, you shouldn't really bring a Bible because they're afraid you may convert someone. New York Times bomber was some time ago, right? This was an American who tried to bomb New York Times, the Times Square. You probably heard about the Somalians from Minnesota who were recruited and went to Middle East to get trained as terrorists to come back and kill people in Minnesota. You have Virginia citizens, the great state of Virginia. 5 kids went over to Pakistan to try to sign up to terrorism school 101. They didn't make it, but they went over there. You have the Christmas bomber, sometimes we call him the crotch bomber, who had the explosives in his underpants and tried